Somewhere on social media this morning, I saw a reference to the armor of God. The breastplate of emotional pleas, the gauntlets of deflection and projection, the shield of resistance to reason, the boots of wading through ever deepening irrational nonsense, and the helmet of stubborn pig-headedness, which has a +5 saving throw against logical arguments. I knew that nobody on this exclusively Christian site was going to get any of that, so I chose to comment on the belt of truth by pointing out that, oh, you don't have any. Only one person replied to that, and not with a counter argument or anything, but just a question mark only. And I took that to imply that maybe this person had only ever heard the echoes within his own church and its Facebook page. So maybe he's never heard of the arguments against his faith. I took that single question mark to mean that maybe this person is sincerely asking for clarification. What do you mean? So I answered accordingly. I explained that what I mean is that the truth is what the facts are, what we can show to be true, not whatever else we might assume or imagine beyond or instead of that, which would be the realm of religion. I'm not just going to believe every fool thing you say just because you say so. You have to understand that an unsupported assertion has zero credence, just like a claim that has already been proven false. You have to show that there's some truth to it, that you didn't just make it up. But there is nothing, not one thing, any religion can show that they got any more accurate than every other faith. And all of them together can't even show that there's a there, that there even is a supernatural at all. Instead, all we have is assorted sets of scriptures that are all obviously penned by men, mere fallible, primitive people who clearly had no idea what they were talking about ever. And some of these tomes, like the Vedic scriptures, the Mahabharata, the Avestas of Zarathustra, and a few others, are much older than the Bible. And all of them are presented as if they're the absolute truth and the revealed word of the one true God, even though they can't agree on who or what their God is supposed to be. And none of them know even whether there is a God at all yet. Faith means pretending to know what no one even can know, like all of these particular details about every depiction of theism. Every version violently conflicts with every other version of deity. If there really was a one true God, you should not allow that. That would be like one of the minimal things. If everybody's dedicating their lives to God, slightly different versions of God, and killing each other over it, there would be a point where it is entirely the deity's fault for not stepping in to correct that shit. So, all of these different religions are obviously embellishing and exaggerating some fictional character from collective fables composed many centuries ago. Every set of scriptures of every faith are full of absurdities, atrocities, inconsistencies, and contradictions, showing that every religion is just a cultural compilation of fantasy folklore, man made myths and legends, lies and nonsense, and never much more than that, where every claim of any faith falls into one or two categories. They're either not evidently true or they're evidently not true, nor even possible. Yet faith is an unwarranted and unreasonable assumption of impossible absurdity, dishonestly asserted as if it was a matter of certain fact, that you're commanded to make believe anyway, or else face the empty threat of a fate worse than death, whether it is eternal damnation, stagnation, or reincarnation, which fortunately isn't real either, since we now have sufficient evidence against the existence of the spiritual soul. And without that, every religion's posthumous promise and imaginary deity is rendered moot anyway. So I posted that, thinking I've just helped someone, given them something to consider and reconsider, something to think about that maybe they never thought of before from an unfamiliar perspective. A thoughtful person would reply with inquiry, wanting to delve into something I had just said in order to test their information against mine, which would be a mutually productive opening of the minds. It's not what I got. Instead, they replied saying nothing at all. They just dropped me a YouTube link to what sounds like a spiritual hymn called What Faith Can Do. Imagine having just heard all of those solid and sound reasons why we don't believe, why we rationally can't believe, and then disregarding all that and saying, this person is skeptical. How sad. They always assume that if I'm not a believer, then I must be sad. That's not the case. I mean, I've always been struggling financially all my life. We all have our problems, but otherwise, I've always been happier than most, and I think I'm living a fulfilling and even meaningful life, certainly better than the vast majority of Christians I've ever met. But they always assume that if I don't believe, then it's not for any of the many reasons I just gave. Instead, they imagine that I must be bitter about something or mad at the God that they think I still believe in or something equally stupid. So they dismiss that whole list of valid reasons that are never addressed and instead imagine if we essentially hear the country music version of
Don't stop believing.
that somehow we'll feel better and we'll just give up on all of those reasons. All of that will go away. And as if all those fatal flaws of the faith faded the moment we heard an uplifting lyric. I've noticed other things that are like that. I think religious belief may be like watching Doctor Who or that old movie Love Actually. There are a lot of feel good emotional moments in both of those, but they're neither of them remotely realistic, like at all, to the point that it begs credulity to sit through either of them. And I say that as a Godzilla fan. And, I've never been diagnosed as autistic, and I don't think I am autistic, but I do find myself feeling increasingly estranged from the rest of my species, especially when they think that a reply like this is appropriate or adequate or at all relevant. It makes me think that maybe our species has been misnamed. I don't think we qualify as Homo sapiens, man, the wise, for several reasons, really, but especially not when meaningless emotion is presented in place of a counter argument, in need of a counter argument, by a culture that so often seems both uninterested in and either unwilling or unable to reason.